Hello to another episode of Consent Dojo. This one is Consent Dojo number 33. Oh my goodness. I think that's yeah, number 33. That's a prime number, right? I think. I like thinking. All right. Anyhow, welcome to, oh, it's not a prime number. Damn
Oh,
it. Okay. Um, I'm Midori, and I facilitate Consent Dojo. I've been doing this for a few years now, and Consent Dojo is here to expand on and have a deep dive into the topic of consent in our everyday life, as well as kink and sex life. That my goal is that for each of us and all of us, that we might be able to build our consent muscles as we go along. And I have the joy of meeting amazing people and inviting them into Consent Dojo to talk about their particular areas of interest, expertise, specialty, and focus on the nature of consent. So I am delighted to introduce two amazing humans that I had an opportunity to meet at Securing Sexuality, which was in Detroit last fall, right? Yeah, it was fall 23. I believe the next one might be sometime in 2025. And it was this amazing gathering of uh, activists and hacktivists and technology people and sex toy makers, sex therapists, sex work activists, um, uh, queer activists, and it was amazing. It
it
was
was definitely
absolutely,
not a group I have ever seen gathered
Yeah, that
together
was
for a
different than
conference.
our usual demographics. It was interesting the cross section that was there.
it was so cool. First night at the hotel bar, it was kind of like, awkward first week in the school cafeteria. And then pretty quickly, all the different sides, cliques, whatever, just started mingling and yeah, it was a lot of fun and also terrifying.
I'm
It was
sorry
terrifying.
that the hackers all had terrible things to share.
Hey, it wasn't just the hackers, it was also the lawyer who was doing the talk around uh, queer rights and reproductive rights, and also what's happening in the manosphere. That was terrifying, but terrifying and with actionable items. So, with no further ado, I want to introduce these two lovely people from the Internet of Dongs. And we've got Render Man or Render and Nicole, as well as backup staff of cats somewhere in the background. Okay. Um, Internet of Dongs. What the hell?
Okay.
And what is it that you do?
You can
Uh,
take what the hell, and I'll take what did
yeah.
you do?
Internet Dongs project started it in 2016. Basically, wanting to learn about internet connected, IoT devices, web apps, mobile app hacking. Uh, because that was starting to become a really big thing. And kind of looked around, and the whole refrigerators, the thermostats, the baby monitors, all that stuff had been, other companies and people had done all sorts of research into those. But I had it in the back of my head that sex toys were becoming connected, and I thought, well, nobody's really seems to have looked at that with any seriousness. And I figured it'd be good for a few funny, talk titles and get me invited to some things. But once I started getting into it and got a local store to give me a few of their demo devices, once I started getting into it, it was actually very terrifying. Because here was an industry that had never had to deal with connected problems before. They didn't know the threats that were out there. They didn't think about things the way that Nicole or I would. They didn't know what they didn't know. It was quite scary. And when so many of them, I call them up or email them and say, yeah, we need to talk. And they say, oh yeah, we care about the privacy and security of our customers. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you do. You have no clue how to do that, because here's your user database on a platter with one command. It just barfed this whole thing at me. You might want to fix that. It was very terrifying. And when you started thinking about the implications of this kind of information getting out there about who's playing with who, what's being said, just even be able to impersonate on accounts, it got really scary really quick and really grim. And so I got very professional very quickly, and treated it with far more respect than I initially had. And I'm glad I did, because there's very few out there that are willing to deal with this sort of industry and topic, because a lot of people are like anything associated with sex, and they're like, whoa, nope, I'm
Uh,
open out of that,
uh,
HR violation. You know.
very, very few technologists, you mean? Is that,
And
or have,
like testing companies or
okay.
anybody
So
that stuff.
professionally, if you're a company, a lot of times you'll hire a consultancy or you'll hire people to do testing of your stuff. And in order to get somebody to test your stuff, they have to agree to that. And there are many companies who do not want to be associated with testing adult devices. Like, it is not something they want to hear about. If you approach them and said, hey, I'm inventing a new internet connected stove, a lot of these security companies would be like, yeah, sure, we'll help you test that and secure that and like certify you and whatever. As soon as you say it's an adult device, that conversation gets shut down.
And the funny part is that literally they are the exact same device. Like when you tear them apart, the Bluetooth chipset and the controller and everything in them is literally the same as from one of these devices as you would find in a
That's a
Bluetooth
speaker. Yeah.
or
Yep, it's the same
thermostat,
Bluetooth chips.
the
It's
stove.
just in a different form factor.
Yeah, slightly different packaging. And so yeah, it's suddenly treated very differently, when realistically, once you peel off the outer casing, it's all the same thing. So it's this weird stigma within society that we still have around anything to do with sex. But it was also interesting because this was an industry that had, up until 15 years ago, give or take, never had to deal with connectivity. It was always manually operated devices. And so they didn't go to the conferences we do. They didn't have anybody around to say, do you think that's a good idea? It was very interesting for me to find a situation where they were genuinely naive about the threats. And oh boy, did they learn quickly.
Which gets into what exactly do we do? We both have day jobs. And on top of my day job, I also run a nonprofit. And then in our spare time around that, which is not as numerous as we would like, we attempt to kind of educate people who want to produce internet connected sex toys. That could be large companies, that could be somebody with a very small company, an idea. We try to educate consumers in a non-terrifying way. And we just try and bring awareness to the issue, because a lot of people will not publicly go on and say, we hack sex toys and we want to tell you about it. We both have no problem saying that, and our families, I mean, my mom gets
suffer from a
excited.
great deal of dignity, so I have no problems being associated with this and being the face of it.
Yeah, my mom gets excited to tell people about it. His parents at least shrug and don't mind, so it's not like anyone's going to be able to embarrass us. There are a couple other groups of hackers who are willing to do that kind of testing, but otherwise there's really not many companies out there openly talking about this or advocating for more understanding. So that's kind of where we fit in, and it is kind of a volunteer-based thing. So if somebody, wants to dabble in ethical hacking, we can help you figure out how to report it to the companies, because we have some existing relationships to them. I think is it a Discord or a Slack, or what is it that you have?
How to Slack. Haven't really used that much. Everybody's just keeps moving platforms. It's very annoying. But reach out and if you're looking to learn some of this stuff, definitely we can like bunch of different devices that have come on the market that we haven't had a chance to check out yet. And, as opposed to like, a thermostat or a fridge that's probably been well tested, this is, there's a lot of low hanging fruit here. So it's actually a really good way to learn, which is exactly what I was trying to do, because you haven't had, you're going to find all the simple stuff very easily and make it educational in what not to do.
For those who want to reach these two and learn about things, or check out such as Nicole's other work, as well as a handout around this. If you're here live, check out the chat. And for those of you who are watching the video later, check it out in the description and text material there. All right, so I am your average end user in terms of the stuff you're talking about. Okay, so I might know a little more about the materials and like don't buy things with the cheap phthalate full vinyl, which by the way, y'all, if you don't know, certain materials that you're putting in your body can also be cancerous and off-gassing, y'all. So check that out. The material makes a difference. But it's not too long ago that sex toys were, well, considered novelty goods made of any crap just to turn a buck, and it was something that was tee hee hee, until small independent manufacturers started bringing in things like medical grade silicone and actually doing material research. Same with lubricants. So another step of evolution from being the tee hee French tickler made of garbage plastic. God, and I'm just thinking about all the sex toy waste material that end up in the ocean and our soils. And then you add to it a whole nother level of this Bluetooth and privacy consideration. So you've been talking about that there is a problem. For me, average user, what is the problem?
Yes, let's back up one step and just describe how the devices tend to work, and then we'll tell you the kind of two spots that there are problems. So I guess we can start with, I'm just going to quickly share one slide. I need to get to the right slide. There we go. And it's going to be followed by a demo. So when we say that there is a connected device, we're not
before we go further, folks, can you see the shared screen?
And I can't
for
see
the
chat
live viewers.
anymore. So
it's okay. Oh, yep, it's good.
Okay, perfect.
Go ahead.
So we're not talking about the little panty vibrators that have like the little remote that only works a couple of feet away. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about where you actually have a device that you pair with a phone. And so much like, we've all paired our headset via Bluetooth, I've paired this with Bluetooth to my phone. My phone then uses an app to talk to the vendor cloud, and the vendor cloud is then going to negotiate the second part of that conversation, which actually we'll see if the demo gods are on our side. So here's the app on my phone. It doesn't look very exciting. I am literally going to.
So when you say vendor cloud, let's say let's say there's Midori Vibrator Company.
It would be the Midori Vibrator Company app talking to the Midori Vibrator tool backend. Yeah.
And it's quite likely that as the Midori Vibrator Company, I might have hired other companies to design things.
Yeah.
Right. So I got Vlad from somewhere in Russia that I found from some third party that I've hired because it sounded like a good idea. And then the cloud or the database is likely to live somewhere that is not under my immediate control.
Exactly. So
this seems to be vibrating. Yeah. Did you do something?
That should be.
Anyway, I clicked the button, and so this apparently is now able to talk to his device because we are partners in that app. So it's kind of connected us previously. So now I apparently have a cat toy because our cats tend to sleep on the vibrators. I guess they're comfortable. I don't know. You're gonna have to ask the cat. But yeah, I will stop sharing this if I can figure out how to stop sharing that. But yeah, exactly. As you pointed out, there's 2 areas of risk. And apparently this is just going to make my hand fall off. There we go. The one area of risk is, did you get really inexpensive people who didn't care to make that Midori vibrator app on the phone? And what data is being put into that app? Because if they don't protect that data, all that data that goes in there, did you set a profile picture? Did you associate it with your email that, has your name in it? Did you put your name in there?
So
are you connecting with somebody,
Maybe it
So
asked you for a phone number for some reason because they were just using a template or what have you.
yeah. So we've got Bob, the back alley programmer.
So it's not even back alley. It was
okay.
in one particular case, one of the vendors I reached out to. It was funny because with a single command that anyone could have put into their web browser, it gave me their entire user database, just one giant file with everything in it. It was rather hilarious, but also scary. But the going through it gave me links to all the profile photos, and so quick script to pull all the profile photos, which was kind of a mistake because I ended up with about 2.5 gigs of dick pics. But the
so if we ever need to send unsolicited dick pics, I have the power.
We got it en masse here. But the interesting part was the first 20 or so were shots from around an office of like lunch or business card or something like that. And it was from the company that had made the app, that they had been contracted to make this app. And, it was really interesting sort of just seeing them, their little test photos that they never actually cleared out of the system. But looking at this company, doing a little research on them, all they had ever made was like tourist point of interest stuff, stuff for like a park or they never had dealt with something that had to deal with authentication, authorization, had to deal with protecting this information. They were used to things being fairly open, so they
just didn't know what they didn't know,
and nobody was around that did know to ask the questions of, well, how are you protecting this? Oh, wait, what do you mean you're not protecting this? You might want to do that.
So, okay, Jane, public question here. All right, so I've got a remote control sex toy. It has like my first name and my Google number and my junk mail email and my photo. So what? So what? I'm not going to run for president. And people know I have a sex life. What's the big deal? I mean, that's not what I'm thinking, but
right. And that is actually perfect. We can kind of blip onto what we call threat modeling in the industry. And it depends. If it's me, I'll put my name, I'll put my email, I'll put my face photo. I don't care.
I mean, we've had naked pictures of you in the fridge, so like this is not anything weird.
So no one's going to be able to necessarily have something bad happen to me. My employers know that I am on this webinar. Hi, Active State. They support me. And they're like, that is a cool side job. Just don't let it interfere with your day job. Yay, everybody wins. On the other hand, even though you and your partner or partners may not care, you and your children might be embarrassed, but they may not care. Your parents may be embarrassed, but they may not care. What about your job? Are you a teacher? Like, you don't have to be a politician. You could be a teacher. That could get you fired. You could work for some kind of government contractor, and that could be embarrassing enough to them that they would fire you because naked pictures of you showed up online, or you've been known to use this kinky device or this risque device. And so a threat model is you look at what is the worst that could happen and how can you mitigate against that, and do you really care? And there's going to be certain circumstances. The example we gave is like sushi. I love sushi. There is a risk with eating raw fish, and there's ways to mitigate that. If it is properly handled and you go to a reputable restaurant, you're probably going to be okay. But there's also personal factors. Are you pregnant? Should you not be eating a lot of fish anyway? Maybe should you wait till you're not pregnant anymore to eat that sushi? Same thing. Is that data something that's just going to be embarrassing or inconvenient, or are you going to lose your job?
So think about situations like the Ashley Madison breach years ago. I
Oh,
mean,
could you explain the site to people who might not be
so
familiar?
Ashley Madison was a website specifically catered to people who wanted to cheat on their spouses. Sort of a niche dating site, shall we say. Somebody took umbrage with their business model. They were doing some kind of underhanded things, but the somebody basically dumped their entire database, all their emails, like a whole bunch of information from this company got made public, and including the entire all the emails of all their users. And there were some interesting people on there. Duggars, the 19 Kids and Counting was on there. There were priests, there were like government officials. People were committing suicide because of this, because it destroyed lives. And I mean, this was something that, not making any judgments or anything like that, but it was legal, and people were informed as to who they were interacting with and why they were there, and that they were cheating on a spouse, whatever. But it destroyed a lot of lives, and it gets really interesting when you start thinking about, well, okay, you have a sex toy, everybody has sex, everybody is here because people had sex, but in certain contexts, like it was just shared in the chat, things like clearances for government work, if it became known that you had an account on one of these vendors' websites, and it was particularly risque or something like that, that could be used against you. Therefore, that could cause problems in getting a security clearance. If you are in certain jobs, like we mentioned teacher earlier, where everything you could be doing is legal, consensual, fine, but it just takes one person from the PTA to get a bee in their bonnet about it, and
especially lately.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's child custody.
Oh yeah, where it's anything that can be used
family
again.
court.
You could just make the other person look less good, and you're the then better person.
I'm waiting. It hasn't happened yet that I've seen, but I'm waiting for the day that a divorce case cites the fact that a guy's had the app on his phone, and it was paired to an account owned with the email address of his secretary, not his wife, or something.
Which actually is a great pivot to, there's a question in the Q&A about what data is being tracked by the vendor, and how does that, does it track the other devices in close proximity, et cetera, et cetera. And so that really depends vendor to vendor. And so the first thing that we recommend is that you read the privacy policy of the device that you're planning to use. A lot of times you can read that privacy policy before you even buy the device. So you do not need to invest that $100 or $200, sometimes more, on one of these smart devices before you read their privacy policy and see what they're sending. There's actually some vendors who have learned from all of this and don't actually make you make an account with an email, which is great, because if they don't have the information, they can't lose it, right? And so they're trying to, many of them are trying to be conscientious. And then others are like, yeah, we need your email because you have to make an account, and we want to be able to pair, like he said, you to your secretary's account. And so when I connected my device to his phone so that he could control the vibrator, that connection is stored somewhere in a server because that server had to negotiate that connection. And so there's a log that my account connected to his account. And that
Now,
data could get stolen or lost or leaked.
now to clarify though, this isn't them attempting necessarily to create a dossier or detailed record of this. By its very nature, anytime information is created, destroyed, or moves, it leaves a trail. So the fact that you logged into the vendors, into the app, you opened it logs in, it connects to their server to look up your friends list or your partner list. There's a log somewhere, usually, of that connection, just for maintenance purposes, to keep track of how many connections do we have today, or do we need to get a bigger server because we're very popular or something. It's stuff we do not think about in our day-to-day that happens thousands of times. Every time you visit a website, there is a log generated somewhere for.
And if it's your refrigerator or oven tattletaling on how many times you open your electronic oven or refrigerator, people care less about that. But
yeah, I mean, how many times a day
extra stress?
Yeah, how many times a day you open your fridge? Okay, that might be a little embarrassing, if you're okay, I didn't realize I snacked that much or something like that. But how many times a day you use your sex toy, that takes on a different connotation. Fortunately, anytime you attach sex to something, so I mentioned OnlyFans on the chat, that somebody was using, an ex was using the fact they had an OnlyFans account in a custody case or something similar in a court case. So it's this weird thing that, because it is salacious, it is suddenly given more weight or impact. So it's the sort of thing that can destroy lives if not handled properly.
And that's one half of it. We talked about the data, right? All of the data that lives in the cloud and is being sent everywhere. Now, the thing that you see pop up in headlines all the time is like, oh, somebody's going to directly use Bluetooth to hack the vibrator. I'm going to tell a story, and Midori, if I need to explain any parts of it a little bit more, let me know, because this one's definitely like hacker culture. In hacker culture, you have little competitions where you intentionally put a wireless device, a Bluetooth device, or other devices around. You don't tell people where it is. And you say, the first person to hack this successfully gets points. And it's a game.
Usually it's a case of whoever finds it first, can like physically locate it. It's an old ham radio thing, bird dogging these radios, or a fox hunt.
But everyone plays this game and tries to get points, right? Well, at DEF CON, which is a conference that happens each year, that's a hacker conference, we wanted to test how far away somebody really had to be to hack a Bluetooth device. Because there's a difference. When I've got a Bluetooth thing on my head, it could be 30 feet, or like, heck, I can even go out to my driveway sometimes and still get signal on my earphones. But this is on the outside of me. Things that block signals are water, and I'm made out of a lot of water. So is everybody else here, unless you're, not from this planet, in which case, tell me more about yourself. So when you put a device inside you, how much does that impact that, right? So the best way to test it is to actually go do it, right? So we put a Bluetooth
situation.
Yep, I put a Bluetooth butt plug in, and I went into a room full of hackers, and they were all told to make it vibrate, and they would get points.
To clarify, this was part of a larger contest. We made this a little sub event in the name of science.
And I'm gonna give 3 things right here. 1, everyone was clearly informed that the person had consented to this activity. This was an optional activity that they did not have. There were plenty of other ways to get points. They did not have to participate in this if they didn't want to. So by choosing to participate and knowing what the device was, they were consenting to it. So like, a lot of people were like very concerned about this. It's like, we made it very clear, the person who you're hunting and you, like, this is optional. Nobody has to do it
to score points in this contest. But there had been some discussion with another group that has hacked a few sex toys about, because all of their tests were about, on the bench, which is 10 meters, 30 feet, 30-foot range. And, they had actually done some tests and found one out in the wild walking around in Berlin, of all places, and said, oh, this is a risk because, people could hack it. And I was like, this is so low on my threat list. It's ridiculous. And here's why. We actually tried it. And how close did they have to get?
So we didn't like break out a tape measure, but it was probably like 7 feet. And this gentleman was circling me like a shark because he had used observational skills to figure out like this chick is like not leaving the room. She's just wandering around, because I was trying to make sure everybody had an equal opportunity to detect the butt plug, right? And so he had basically figured out like this girl is sus. She is circling the room. So he knew it was me, but he had to prove that, right? To get the
We
point.
gave them commands or links to the commands that they needed to send.
And so he was trilaterating me by circling like a shark, and he kept getting closer and closer and closer. And he definitely got it to go off when he was like 6 or 7 feet away. But I didn't react because, a lot of people are like, oh, people are going to react if there's a butt plug going off. And I've had a butt plug go off before. Like, I'm not going to react. So like, I think he thought like, maybe I got it wrong. So he backed up, he went and started circling the entire room again and did it a second time. And again, at about the 7-foot mark is when he got it to go off. And that time I kind of looked at him like, please stop. Like, I didn't say it, but I looked at him like, please stop. And he's like, oh, it's going off. I was expecting like more of a reaction. He's like, are you the fox? Because it's called a fox hunt. And I was like, yes, I am the fox. Please stop. And he's like, okay. And he pulls his hand off the keyboard, stops. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go get my points now. And I'm like, yes, let's go get your points now. And so I think it's really like a 6, 7, maybe 8 if you're generous foot range for someone to physically attack the device. So even though that is something that could happen if you were in a play club or something, it is technically possible.
But the other
However, they're going to
thing,
be right there.
Yeah, you have to consider somebody has to be prepared to do this with the various commands necessary for each and every model out there, of which like I've documented some of them. And they have to be within proximity and like I said, be well prepared for this. So somebody there with a laptop or other like a tablet or something like that specifically set up for this, looking for this standing in the middle of a shopping mall. I've never found, like in all the Bluetooth war driving stuff I've done, I've never found one outside of like a sex shop. Their display.
Now, while not a sex toy, my previous car was a Prius and an early model at that. I think there was the Prius remote key that the dongle that could like unlock not just that car, but many Pria. Is it Pria if it's multiple Prius?
I don't technically know. English is rather odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that they hadn't, there was a rolling code situation that sometimes it would happen that
more than one worked.
Close enough to work. But it was, if you're in a play club or something like that, usually they don't want you to have your phone out. So controlling these things wouldn't be an idea. But if you are out in public, you're probably expecting it to go off, randomly from your partner anyway. So would you be able to tell it was somebody else?
But this gets into the question of if you ever found out you didn't consent to that other person setting it off. And this gets into the super scary realm of what is that?
Yeah, it's if somebody is close enough to set the thing off and that is your concern, and somebody else is setting it off, they are probably close enough you could probably punch them if the opportunity was there. Look for the person laughing hysterically. But the other thing too is if you're in the privacy of your own home and somebody else is suddenly controlling it, you got a stalker outside your window or something. Like you have your problem to worry about.
Now, given that I just came back from Tokyo, where it's an incredibly crowded environment, especially on trains. Also, as I totally get the joking around the, "Hey, it's gotta be close enough for me to punch them." I also it's it is fundamentally not consensual, like Nicole pointed out.
Yeah.
Um,
Neither is punching them.
yeah, well, yeah, but, in terms of, between us, we could, like, casually laugh about it to a point, and then there's the real life situation of, and now right now, the distance might be 6 or 7 feet.
The more people you cram in, the shorter the distance gets because every person contains water. And so
Mhm,
if it was a crowded room or a crowded train, that distance would actually shrink even more. But the worst part of this one is in some places, although we all agree that's not consensual and that's wrong, there are not necessarily, the laws have not caught up with technology. There's not
mhm,
necessarily a law that you could leverage
yeah,
if you wanted to leverage it to defend yourself again. Well, it's not defend yourself, but I guess to get that person punished for what they did. In some places, render, what's the name? It's by deception.
Rape by
Rape.
deception is in a few jurisdictions, few states, where it's like if my twin brother pretended to be me to sleep with my wife, kind of thing. And she thought she had given consent to me, but wasn't to my brother,
mhm,
um, and that sort of situation, or pretending to be somebody you're not. Yeah,
So
there's
if I impersonated, so circling back to the data part, like do not reuse passwords. Everyone here, if you haven't heard of something called a password manager, please investigate that. There are free ones and there are paid ones, and it makes it so that you can have a unique password for every site. There's something called a spray and pray attack, where they'll find a data dump from a hack and they'll get the passwords and emails for that. And if you reuse that same email and password on a sex toy site, there is a chance, now the timing would obviously have to work out, that they could impersonate you or your partner and attempt to start a session with them. And then you have like this rape by deception thing, but you don't necessarily know at that time because maybe you're expecting sometime over the weekend for your partner to message you and be like, hey, let me control your vibrator, even
but
though
or
they got that password from a breach and it's not really your partner.
but when your partner comes home and you say, oh, hey, that was a lot of fun on the weekend, it's like, wait, what? I never sent that request. I never played with you. Wait, what? And I maintain that the sense of violation is on par with
yeah,
anything physical from that,
yeah,
and that
that's
is
terrifying. And
and
in term
it's
Go ahead.
unfortunate because one of the things I do when I give a talk is there's a clip I show from a movie called The Ugly Truth. Um, Catherine Wigg has this vibrating panties on, and she suddenly has to go out to a dinner with her boss and a colleague. And when she gets to the restaurant, she puts her purse down, the remote rolls out, kid picks it up, starts clicking away. Of course, she's losing it as she's trying to talk to this client and everything. And everybody's giggling at this. But when you actually stop and take a look at it, it is some really serious areas because that kid didn't have her consent. She was not expecting it. She was not in a place where she was anticipating this thing going off. So physical harm is a possibility. Um, so yeah, that kid sexually assaulted her basically.
The
Mhm,
kid also did not know what they were doing. They didn't consent to be participating in that type of adult
So
activity.
now, technically, depending on the local laws, maybe because the kid was controlling it and she was getting off to it, does that mean she's now raped a minor? Like it's gets really weird really quick, and this is
mhm.
the sort of thing you see in like so many rom-coms and stuff like that.
Yeah, rom-coms have a lot of problematic stuff. Now, I was also thinking about the password thing, and if
Mhm.
there's any particular password, uh, program systems you recommend, would love to hear about that. But I could imagine I'm thinking here. if I were using the same password for everything, right? Including my sex toy, including my bank account, including my home security system. Is
That's
that a
not good.
Well,
risk?
quite frankly, you'd be an
That
idiot.
is
Yeah.
that is a huge risk, because one breach, and I'm sure everybody hears every week there's a new breach. That one breach, someone's going to buy those passwords and they're going to do a spray and pray attack where they try all the banks and they try all the systems, and some of them are going to work because you did reuse the password, and so they might get into your bank, or they might get into your sex toy, or they might get into your home video camera. Like, if there are, like I said, there's free ones and there's paid ones. We personally use 1Password. We used to use LastPass. There were some issues with that one. But Chrome also has one built into their browser if you want a free one. And there's also, I'm going to forget the name of the other one that's out there.
There's
KeyPass, I think, is one of the other big ones. KeyPass is one of the other ones.
Like key pass. Okay.
KEE pass.
Okay, okay. Now, I am, and I'm sure there's more levels of thinking about risk. So should I, okay, again, asking as Jane Public here, oh my God, I'm terrified. I'm never going to buy a Bluetooth sex toy.
That is not what we want you to come away with.
These things are an amazing bit of kit. I mean, the pandemic showed that it was a way for people to stay intimate at a distance, and it probably saved a bunch of marriages.
It's also something, if you want to have anonymous things, you could give anonymous people, like, I think there's whole Reddit communities for this, the ability to control your vibrator. That's a super safe way to explore anonymous things and getting off with people.
What? Explain what?
Okay, so if I wanted to get off with somebody that I'd never met, an anonymous thing, I could start by dabbling with that virtually. I could put in the vibrator, and I could go to Reddit or other places and be like, who wants to control my vibrator? And there are people that will happily take you up on that opportunity. And that, if that is something that interests you, that is a super safe way to dip your toes into there to see how you feel about that. Because both people are consenting to this anonymous thing, but you're not actually physically meeting.
Even then,
so it's kind of like a digital and remote version of a black room in the back of a gay bar.
Yeah.
But actually, that's not far off, because if you're somebody who may be being their sexual, or wants to try something with somebody of the same gender, but going to a bar like that would be really scary.
Depending where you live.
Just having one of these devices and giving control to someone is of the same gender, mentally, lets you try these things in a much safer way, as a first step, maybe. But the trick is that there are countries where this sort of device is very illegal.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
Well, it's either that the sex toys in general are illegal, or the fact that homosexuality is illegal. And in this case, this is the Kiru Onyx.
And like we said, mine compare with his, but also if there were two vibrators or two sleeves, you could pair the two sleeves, or you could pair the two vibrators.
Yeah, it's a mix and match. Some of the devices even have I believe the actual, like, in the code, the function is orgy mode.
There is only one brand with orgy mode, which was very disappointing to me as a poly person. When I had multiple partners, I would have paid for that feature at that point in time.
But it's the one too many protocol. But you could imagine if you're in a repressive country where homosexuality is illegal, that the country filters the internet. If they were able to look at the traffic and see, Bob and Jim connected their sleeves together, they're probably gay. let's go, raid them in the middle of the night kind of thing. It could end up disclosing far more than wanted to and put you at risk.
Yeah.
So
And
there are tons of benefits for long distance relationships and trying out things, but we talked about that threat modeling thing. It comes with some risks.
And really, the first thing that we always tell people is you're allowed to lie on the internet. You can generate a new email address and use that to register the account for the device and never use it for anything else.
And if you have a password manager, in the password manager, you can come up with a whole fake persona, channel your inner James Bourne, is it? Whatever.
Jason Bourne and James
Bond. Bourne, whatever. And pick a fake name. Make it androgynous. If you want to be on the safe side, pick a fake birthday to go with it and set up a brand new email that matches that fake persona. You now have a whole fake persona, and that could be your sexy device login. And now here's the trick. Never email from your real account to that account or vice versa, because then they will be connected. Never the twain shall email or connect. And then you have this great plausible deniability thing going on of don't put your face as the profile picture. It's not your name. It's not your birthday. It's not your email. Really great plausible deniability. And now this does not apply if you're going to be a cam model. I signed up for multiple cam model sites to test out how well they were honoring people's privacy. And the good news is they're doing pretty good, at least the major ones. I didn't test like all of the ones out there. I don't have that much time. But for those, because they are cutting checks to you, you have to put your legal information. On the other hand, if you're not doing it as a cam model, and this is just for funsies, lie.
Yeah. So if there is a compromise from the company, something accidentally leaves the door open and somebody makes off with the database, if it gets posted somewhere, there'll be this email address that leads to nowhere. There's no identifying information. So you've got that.
There's a question in the chat. What brand was the orgy mode?
I believe it's Lovence.
Is it safe?
Lovence.
I haven't really torn apart the protocol yet, but that was meant more for if you're a cam model and you're a controlling device and you want your fans or your viewers to be able to respond in kind, feel the effects of that. But literally in the code, it was called orgy mode, which that made me laugh. And that's the thing with this research, is that there are some things that are just objectively very funny.
So back to the Jane Public question, right? So assuming that me and my partner, just between the two of us, want to use remote toys, I'm at a point of, oh my God, what are all the risks, and terrified, and yet want to because of we're in distance, right? How do I choose?
I would say go for much like many of the large brand names put out a lot of information about their body safe materials. Because of the different lawsuits that have happened, those larger companies have taken notice of the fact that they need to protect people's information, and they have good privacy policies in place, and really are not asking for more information than they need. So if you have the money, we recommend go for a major brand. Please avoid Amazon. Please avoid
not
you can get a name brand on Amazon, like Amazon no name, stuff.
If you
don't go to Alibaba or AliExpress.
If you can't easily find the manufacturer's website and view the information. So if you go to like Lovence or Kiru or Vibes or WeVibe or any of those, they'll talk about security. They'll talk about privacy. They'll have, to varying degrees. We're trying to get them to all do better. We're trying to get them to have like specific things in their FAQ saying, here's what we do about security. Here's a lot of information that if you're really interested in this, here's how we protect things. But it's the fact that they've thought about it versus a lot of companies who will slap something together, put it in a box and ship it. You got to wonder why this, like these things are a couple of $100 a piece. And if you're suddenly getting something for $35,
they cut a corner somewhere.
Yeah, and you got to think their testing and infrastructure is probably not up to snuff.
And then, so get the major companies with actually statements and hope that it's backed up. And on top of that, lie.
Yes.
Have my Jane Rando at hotmail.com.
Yeah. And honestly, that covers most people. Like if
most
you
of
are
the
not
casual users,
if you're not Midori, who has lots of people who know who you are and might be looking to stalk you, if you're just Jane Doe, that's probably going to be good for you. And especially if you don't wear the device in public, you don't have to, like we said, it's like 7 feet. So like if you're not going to wear it in public, like you've cut down your risk profile on that so much. You can take a couple additional steps beyond that. They're not guaranteed to do anything, but like one of them is, and this one in general, like if you're on FetLife, if you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, X, whatever, operational security, let's find that slide. Hopefully everybody knows what we're referencing here. Boop-a-doo.
While you're looking for that, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A box that, while they are good questions, I think it's beyond the scope of the objective of Consent Dojo. But I do want to read them and acknowledge that they came through, and this seems more a discussion to be done, asked directly to Render and Nicole outside of this, because Consent Dojo is also addressing practicals for everyday folks, right? So there's a question of manufacturers are catching up with threats. Is the next stage lobbying for legislation to address abuse via technology, as with the conversation around deepfake and Taylor Swift?
Yes, go follow the EFF and the ACLU for more you can do to make noise about that.
And if anybody has the ability to get me to have me testify before Congress, I really want to get the word dong into the congressional record.
EFF is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. We'll put the link in there. And what was the other one?
The ACLU.
ACLU. So that would be a question. And follow them. And again, I'm sorry, but there's scope and time limitation. The other question also is there a template for manufacturers to use as a basis for their privacy policies? Is this something that they should contact you directly?
They could contact us directly, but that's a lawyer question. And any company who has a lawyer can set up a privacy policy. There are templates for that, and that's in lawyer land.
Great. And I thank the person for asking that, and I hope you'll forgive me as a moderator to keeping this on track.
You're moderating, you're doing what you're supposed to.
So yeah, we were talking about OPSEC, what is it? Well, it's being aware of the information that you're sharing. You may not realize how much information you're sharing. Like, did you put your phone number directly on your back? The January 6th rioter? And so I'm sure you all saw that a lot of people from the January 6th thing got caught because they had badges from their company or phone numbers right on their back. So when you take a photo, be aware what can be seen in your background, what can be seen on your person, and clean up the area. Do you have distinctive tattoos? Maybe don't show them off,
This applies more for like cam models or like your own OnlyFans or anything.
Or even if you use the fake information, but you're going to do a profile picture, plausible deniability, hide something, obfuscate something, make it harder for them to
And somebody in the chat is having a good laugh about
Yeah,
the rioter with the number on their back.
yeah. But it's interesting. There was a situation I found myself in where somebody had pointed me at a OnlyFans page for this woman, and she had a bunch of photos publicly available as the teaser kind of thing. And I'll quick scroll through, and I'm looking. I'm like, wait, what the hell is that in the background? And I'm noticing a very distinctive sign in the background.
Please note, only my husband is more interested in the background than the girls.
Yeah, this is how my brain works. Is like I can see naked people anywhere on the internet, but hidden and secret stuff, that grabs my attention. Anyways, there was this distinctive logo on the building behind her, and zoom in and everything. Okay, it was a University of Southern California on the top of this building. Like, okay, campus or something. Quick bit of googling. No, it was the AT&T building in LA. They had sold the naming rights on the building to University of Southern California. And from where she was out the window, you could see it very clearly that she was several floors up. And
note, she does not live there anymore, which is why
yes.
we're happy to tell the story.
And so I started looking at the other photos there and found some distinctive landmarks from the LA, downtown LA skyline that allowed me to actually triangulate roughly where her apartment was. And by got it down to about a block, started looking at the apartment buildings in that block. Most of them were very helpful in providing floor plans for all the different suites, as well as what floors they were on. I narrowed it down to which corner of the building it was within 3 floors of where she lived, all just through publicly available photographs. And it scared the living crap out of me, trying to figure out what to do. But then looking through her feed, suddenly there was this change in the photos. And so I believe that she learned her lesson, or at least expired, and moved. So that's why we're okay to talk about this. But it was just a how do you report something like that and not seem like a complete creep? These are the things that I tend to notice that scare the daylights out of me. So yeah, knowing what's in your background, as innocuous as it can be, it's amazing what people are able to take from a tiny little smidgen of information. If it's something, a very unique a pin that you have. I'm sure there was a case in Tokyo where a Instagram, famous person took a selfie of herself and said, "Oh, I'm just about home," after a long day or whatever. Through the reflection in her eye,
because cameras have a lot of megapixels now.
The stalker was able to tell some distinctive architecture of the train station that she was at, knowing that was near her home and that she frequented it, hung out there until he crossed paths with her and ended up assaulting her. And it's from reflection in
that's like right out of the original Blade Runner.
Pretty close. It's been a CSI.
Sci-fi predicts the future, and sometimes not in great ways.
Yeah.
I just happen to be an original Blade Runner fan, so.
There's a comment there saying a lot of folks who play the Where in the World game is in challenge operational or open source intelligence.
But yeah, so we'll stop with the terrifying. But yeah, so just
I also for the chat, I want to bring the conversation for the chat room, bring the conversation back to because personal security, all important. Back to the discussion around consent and selection of remote pleasure toys.
Ones that have good privacy policies that explain it in plain English. I don't know if you've ever tried reading terms and conditions for anything. Like a toaster nowadays comes with terms and conditions. Really? Like, they'll total it up, and you could spend like months of your life reading all the terms and conditions for everything. So having a company
Yeah.
that says, yes, we ask for this permission in our app. Here's why. Here's what we're doing with this information. You know, being clear about it. And they can still have their legal terms in another document, but being forward about it. Saying that, yes, there are risks. Yes, are you sure you want to enable your camera, microphone, and such?
And I'm sure all of you have installed an app at some point on your phone. Phones are actually pretty good about forcing developers to ask your consent. Can this have your microphone? Can this have your location, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera? And in a lot of cases, for the app to work, it really does need your camera because it's expecting you to share a video session with the other person you're pairing with and whatever. But there's usually the option for only while in use. So that's a good one. And if the app is asking for some funny stuff, you might want to investigate a little. Sometimes it's not that they're being malicious. Sometimes it's just that the way that the Android or Apple has partitioned the way it gives out permissions forces them to ask for something a little bit more than they wanted just because that was bucketed together. But they're getting better about that. And so when you're installing app, again, you can usually install the app before you buy the device. So install the app and see, like, is it asking for your contacts and, like, the whole world? Maybe it shouldn't need your contacts. It shouldn't need, things that you don't see directly how this is going to benefit you and your partner that want to use this device. So if you just, before you even buy the device, try out the app and are like, no, sketchy, don't like it, go for a different device.
Great advice. I'm also paying attention to the time because I know y'all have a fun homework.
And everyone's like, we don't want homework. Oh.
So for those of you who are first time or in Consent Dojo, I ask my guests to come up with a practical, every person accessible homework. It might be a thinking exercise. It might be something fun with partner. But just something to not, just to passively let this into your eyes and out through your ears, but something to think about.
And I believe Render kind of gave a preview to this one earlier, but here is a YouTube link, which we will share in the chat. And it's go watch that clip and, think about it from what opportunities for consent were there that were not used.
Let me read this for people who might be choosing to listen. So the homework is watch, quote, The Ugly Truth, unquote, movie, the restaurant scene, and consider what opportunities for consent were there that were not used? Who had the opportunity for consent taken away? Whose consent was violated? How do you feel about this, quote, funny, haha, unquote, scene when taking the time to really think about it? And here's a YouTube link.
And you could apply this to just about any of the rom-coms or anything that are popular out there, Sex and the City or whatever. There are a lot of situations that we laugh at in popular culture that are actually very troublesome when you stop and think about it. In particular, things like consent. Another common example I use is the old movie Revenge of the Nerds. Yeah, that whole movie is just one long cringe of consent violations.
Give an example for those and a little bit about the movie, because it is a generation thing.
Yeah, the nerds have their own fraternity. They sneak into the attic of the sorority and install a bunch of cameras so they can watch them shower. And one of the guys is wearing a Darth Vader mask and pretends to be the cheerleader's boyfriend and has sex with her. And then, afterwards, takes the mask off and everything. And it's just like, oh God, that is horrible. And it's especially when you look at
Yeah.
some of the older movies. 80s was rife with this stuff of people who are like going way beyond consent, didn't even enter into the lexicon.
And something that in terms of discussion of consent, I mean, here I am in San Francisco and in therapy and sex education milieu, colleagues, and culture, subculture, and the San Francisco and U.S. kink subcultures, where we have been discussing, struggling, arguing, figuring out, working on what the hell is this consent thing for years. But it's been in tiny little subcultures, lawyers aside, tiny little subcultures, and for folks who are thinking that discussion of consent is something normal and has been around for ages, that's not the case. And a lot of the discomforts that people are now experiencing is the awareness of what's been normal. And this is about an evolving and changing cultural norm. Just a
Having
comment
gone
on that.
to Catholic school, don't ask, I'm Jewish. There definitely was not consent education. I have to thank the kink community, which I've been involved with since I was little, for bringing that into an active conversation, because that was not something that anyone talked at school. My mom, yes, totally, would mention it, maybe not in detail for lack of maybe like knowing that I needed it or something, who knows. She conceptually shared it and said like you should do this, but didn't necessarily go into detail. I mean, who wants to go into those kind of details with their mom anyway? But the kink community was like, these are the things you can specifically ask. You can consent to this and not that. And it was kind of very mind blowing that you could get that granular, where you could say, I consent to have this kind of activity and nothing beyond that.
And
And
this
best
gets
practice, oh, go on.
and this gets interesting for me because I've been looking more at the tech world that I'm in, and developers and that, and just thinking about things like consent, like we were talking about permissions on an app before. Of a lot of developers will just, it's like they oh, I might want this, so I'll just take add this permission to access your contacts or something, or your location, or whatever. But it's the getting like actual consent as to why you are doing it. What are you doing? Like, tell me why you need this, and justify it, and I'll probably give it to you. If you say, oh, I need this, your access to your contacts, because as was said, some of these apps you can use to contact a partner, and so being able to go through your contacts to find their email address or phone number or whatever is a legit thing. Okay, cool. Oh, here's the permission. I'll let that. But it's the being more explicit with the how and the why that they're doing these things, as opposed to just letting things happen and you're wondering like, what did I just agree to?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, future of remote toys. What do you want to see?
Well, what I want to see versus
Yeah.
what I think will happen are two different things. Um, sex robots are the definite.
They've always the hotness.
Yeah, they're always just a couple of years away for the last 15 years. But
Uh-huh.
they're getting pretty substantially substantial in their capabilities. Attended a conference last year on love and sex with robots. Very interesting, actually. And when you start looking at things like ChatGPT and generative AI, being able to hold conversations, like, wow, okay, that suddenly gets really interesting, because with any new modern technology, the first thing that people apply it to is sex. And so, yeah,
Yep.
this is going to be a thing, but it's the okay, now you're talking something that has possibly cameras in it, and is probably not doing all the computing and everything locally. So there's a cloud connection. But you've now also got the added thing of, if it's got any articulation, like if it's able to move on its own, um, what sort of limits are there? Like if a jaw is articulated and not properly coded, with a hard, or doesn't have any sort of hard limit, you can imagine a coding glitch or an attacker or somebody like that sending a closed jaw rapidly at a very inopportune moment, and that sort of thing.
I've years ago I wrote a
Somebody says
really
different fetish.
cheesy, years ago I wrote I will admit, badly written, super cheesy, sex-filled science fiction in that kind of Blade Runner-esque Tokyo. And just when I think I have it here. Oh yeah, it's very terribly written, and just so you know, and it's out of the darkest back alleys of my mind. And I always preface this with, this is not erotica, it is absolute filth and smut. And don't do anything that I have written in here because I needed some place to put all the wrong. And in that, there's a scene where a despicable main character visits a robotic brothel, and the dude at the front desk is like, oh yeah, room 13. Yeah, we had a glitch last week. It's okay now.
Oh, minute.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you start thinking about it, because the technology is around. It's legal. It's here. They've got it syncing with videos now. VR is a thing. I was just reading today that everybody's really pissed that Apple won't put out a porn app for the new their VR system. But I know somebody will jailbreak that thing and put one there sooner or later. But that I do think that these are going to be a very important thing for anybody in a long distance relationship.
Also, thinking in terms of, okay, I also want to mention a previous episode with Dr. Markey, who I've had on digisexuality and consent, but also the possibility of technologically and remote device, AI, all the tech, as ways for making full sexuality accessible for differently abled and disabled people.
Yeah, our discussion before the show recording, we touched on that, and it really got me thinking that for those with disabilities or limitations, this sort of technology could be a real game changer. Actually, thinking about designing some things there.
What we were talking about before for the viewers is we were talking about my March Consent Dojo guest, who is a designer of toys for disabled people. And we'll put the information in there, in the site. And I totally want you all to connect. TouchBot is the site. And disability and sexuality for disabled individuals have been ignored in a lot of ways. It's also my own blind spot as well, so I'm looking forward to learning from them. And the idea of tech used for good, not evil, because technology just is. It just is, and it's how we humans, complicated creatures, choose to use them. It's like that opening scene of 2001.
Use a hammer to build a house or cave in a skull.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are amazing creatures, but my God, we do some really stupid things.
I guess what I'd like to see from tech in the short-term future is just taking more consideration for don't ask for things you don't need and don't store things longer than you need them. Like maybe keep the sessions for a couple days or a week or a month, but then trash them. Like, do you really need to be able to go back
Right.
further
And
than that?
oh God, why didn't I think of this thing earlier in the discussion? If a company is bought out by another company, so somebody who's dealt with, old-fashioned publishers, when my intellectual property is in the stable of one company, is then sold to a larger one, I lose a lot of control over that. And somehow the contracts are so often in their favor because us artists, which is why like the lawyers for the California Lawyers for the Arts exist. But I wonder if the data of, say, small company purchased by mega company, but a discussion for another time.
One thing to look at is when you
Mm-hmm.
read that privacy policy, I'm sure you've all heard of GDPR, which is like a privacy protection for European. There's also the California Privacy Protection Act. You, in some cases, can use a form to request full deletion of your data from a service. So if you hear that they're going to be bought out, you could request that your information be deleted. Or if you stop using a service, you could request they delete all of your information. So having a reference to that kind of policy of if you want a full deletion is a major kudos towards a brand.
Yeah. So if you're looking through the privacy policies and FAQs, and they specifically say, oh, and if you want to delete your account, there's a button in the app or just send us an email. The fact that they've thought about that ahead of time is actually a really good thing, and a good vote of confidence in them.
Nice. Oh, somebody earlier asked if there's an audiobook of my Filthy Filthy book. No, there isn't. Though I think in earlier episodes of my Patreon, I do read. The funny thing is, when I'm reading that book out loud, you can actually hear me blushing. I wrote it, and I can't read it out loud.
The cringe is audible.
Like, oh my God, this is really filthy, because I wanted to step into from the voice of a despicable character. Yeah, so there is a section of me reading it, but it's terrible, absolutely terrible. And yeah, welcome to the filth of my mind. Got a few minutes left here, and parting words, reminders. We have the homework to think about that scene. Yeah.
I guess mine would be, yes, we told you a lot of terrible things, but we also told you how to like work around the terrible things. So I am all for Bluetooth technology and other smart technology. Just try and pick companies that aren't terrible and enjoy things with your partner, whether they're nearby or far away. And remember, you can lie on the internet, and password manager, password manager, password manager, password manager.
I am so disappointed in you, Nicole, because you missed the opportunity to use the phrase "reach out and fuck someone." No, I guess if there's any party thoughts, it's on that similar vein that, yeah, don't be afraid of these devices, and all the new connected stuff that's out there has all sorts of interesting potential as well. But you have to stop and think about what you're doing, what you're putting it out, what are the risks. A lot of the things that we've mentioned to safeguard your data, using a fake email address, fake name, that sort of thing, can apply to all sorts of other stuff.
I also want to point out that I have a particular psychological condition that when there's a cat within my field of vision, I can't my skill of comprehension, my forebrain completely melts down. I know Render was saying a bunch of things. I hope you all got that, but I was totally like, so yeah. But if you all are going to get a toy around this, or if you have people who use Bluetooth enabled toys and you want people to think about it, hey, send them the video of this. It'll go up in the Rope Dojo YouTube channel. Not Rope Dojo, that's my other program. Duh. See, cat. Brain, melty brain words. Ah, God. Okay, so man, damn it, the cat is distracting me. Crazy cat lady here. Um, this is going to be viewable on the Consent Dojo YouTube channel, also in my FHP site in the Consent Dojo. Might be something to send it to somebody to think about it. Yeah, and let's see. Oh, that must be the kitty. Okay.
Yeah, I just love the fact that we've got the most chat going on. As soon as the cat showed up.
I think he wants dinner because he was trying to get my attention. So
Yeah.
even though I gave him dinner, he has one brain cell he shares with his brother. So we have to present dinner to him because he doesn't go looking for it.
Oh God, I have a cat on the opposite end. Jack is, if he were bipedal, he'd have an FBI file. He is scary smart. Anyhow, I want to close this out with thank you for joining us, whether you are joining us now. And I love the comments that are going in there. And some of you all in the chat room, I know who you are. It's great to see you here. Did you all see some of the names that popped up? Yeah. And so thank you for being here live. Thank you for watching down the road. And consent is nuanced, it's challenging, it's exciting, and consent is so we can have the fun we want with people we want to have them. Okay? And consent, like working out, is something that we need to practice in a lot of ways, tiny little steps every day so we can build our consent muscles. And come back for another episode. I'm going to wrap up the recording now. Now, my lovely guests, stay a moment and see you another time.